Hello and welcome, this is Agent XP, and welcome back to another TRLE tutorial. In this episode, we're going to take a look at how you make no collision tiles. You're probably already aware that the TRLE consists mainly of square blocks, but there is a method whereby you can create diagonal edges between portals, and this is what we refer to as no collisions. I'm going to show you how you create no collision squares in the level editor. Creating no collision tiles can be fairly tricky. When you first approach it, I was put off from doing it for a long time. It's something people who are new to the level editor might struggle with a little, but once you get used to it, it's really not that hard. It's not as hard as it looks. So we're going to dive on into the example room that I have created. So here I've created a small example area in which I can show you how to create no collision tiles. So this is a very simple 8-click high room stacked on top of another 8-click high room that's exactly the same dimensions as it. As you can see, if you look on the 2D map, I have pillars in each of the corners. I've textured it and lit it so that it looks a bit more appealing for the tutorial. And we're going to start with this. So we've already covered how to create a simple room with pillars and a pool of water at the bottom. So there are several different methods of creating no collision that I'm going to show you. So the first one is what we call the dry method. You can create this in a pool of water as well. Just because it's called the dry method, don't think you can't use it in water. But this is the easiest way of doing no collision. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop into the upper room. We can see the lower room from below. We're going to turn off lighting and texturing. I'm going to select the top of this little pillar that I've made. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to press floor up once. And if we turn off and on draw doors, we will see that has now created a little platform. So it's square in the middle. And there's a full square on each of the sides, and in the corners you can see here there is a diagonal tile. Part of the tile is sloped upwards and the edge is flat, and this is perfect for creating a ledge with no collision on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the little no collision button, and then we're going to click on the flat edge of all the tiles until they are coloured in red. If you turn on face edit, the red will disappear if it's textured, but when you have no textures turned on, you can see that these are red corner tiles. So we're going to go ahead and texture this. I'm going to select the texture I have in the middle square, right click it so that it jumps to the right tile in the texture view, and then I'm going to right click and drag the area so that I texture the whole platform. Now I'm going to click on the little black transparent texture in the lighting panel at the bottom of the screen. So the top left hand texture, the black texture, will texture something transparent if you use that. So I'm going to then go ahead and I'm going to click on all the flat bits that we coloured in with the no collision option. I'm going to texture those as transparent. If we were just to leave this platform the way it is, we would get errors when we compile the game. So what we're now going to do is click on the pit to room 0, right click to go into the room below, and we're going to look at the situation in this room. Now in this room, we still have a flat ceiling area, and we can't apply no collision to a flat tile. You can sometimes end up applying no collision to a flat tile, but you will get countless errors if you do, so it's advisable not to try. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to use the slope ceiling option, point the arrow in the direction that you want to lower the ceiling, and then right click to create a sloped ceiling section. And we're going to do the same again on the other side. You probably get the idea. I'm going to do the same on all the squares that had flat faces. Now on these corner bits we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to hold down Control and click so that the arrow points in the direction I want to lower the ceiling, and we're going to right click to create a corner tile. And we are going to do this all the way around this little platform that we've made until we end up with a sort of fluted pillar shape. We're going to click on the no collision button and we're going to select all these diagonal corner tiles and paint them in the no collision option. Once again, you need to make sure that textures are turned off to do this, and there we have it. Now we need to texture the underside of this pillar. Make sure you turn no collision back off before you do this, in case you might end up with a few mishaps. Cool, so that is how you do the dry method of no collision. So if I go back into the room above, you can see that we have this very nice ledge platform, and it has diagonal edges. What I do notice though is that the textures are not matching up properly on the corners, so what we can do is rotate them until they match up. You have to see what the room below looks like and use that as a reference point to rotate the texture in the upper room. So I'm going to hold down Alt again and rotate the texture accordingly so that it matches. Whoops, I think I textured that wrong. Yeah, there we go. So this is just nitpicking details, but it's always nice to address these tiny details because it will make your level look that bit more professional. And one more, rotate, click, and there we see all our texture squares are matched up nicely. Next, I'm going to show you how you create no collision using the water method. Despite what the name would suggest, you can also use this in a dry room. It's not restricted to a water room. It's simply a naming convention that distinguishes between the two different methods. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come into this water room, which is at the base of our existing room. We can click to go inside the water room. In fact, I haven't set it to water. That was a bit of an oversight. So we'll do that and we'll select water 2, so that will create a bit of a ripple on the surface but not too strong, whereas 1 is flat, 3 is wavy and 4 is very wavy. So I'll select 2, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make pillars in the corner of this room. And then we are going to create a shape to this pool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the 2 squares either side of the corner pillars that I've made, and I'm going to point the direction arrow away from the wall, and I'm going to right click. Now you'll see that this room is conveniently 4 clicks high, and I've chosen this depth for a reason. It's just deep enough for Lara to swim in, but it's also a really good height to work with if you want to make this kind of no collision. So what I've done is I have got the corner of this tile to slope away from the wall. I'm going to select the tile and then right click the floor plus to raise it up by 4. And what that has done is created a sloped edge to the platform, and the edge facing the corner of the room is flat. So I'm going to do this again all the way around the room. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this, and then we can address the next stage. So now that we've done that, the next thing that you need to do is hover over one of the tiles and then click the floor button, and this will highlight the ceiling tile for you. What you want to do here is get the ceiling arrow to point towards the wall, and then you right click at the minus ceiling arrow to create a diagonal ceiling. Now, if you rotate the room, you'll be able to see what this has done. It's sloped the ceiling into the wall. And the reason we do this is because we have to apply no collision on a diagonal tile. We cannot do it on a flat tile. So although you won't see that slope, it's what enables us to apply the no collision tile. Because this time we're not applying the no collision on the floor, we're applying it on the ceiling above. So although we want the floor sloped away, we also need the ceiling to be sloped. So I'm going to repeat this step on all the corners, and then we're going to apply our no collision. We've now sloped all the ceiling tiles, and we can go ahead and apply the no collision on all the diagonal edges around the room. Right, now we're going to go into the upper room and we're going to turn on lighting, draw doors, and you can see that what we've done has kind of screwed up the room above and created a bit of a mess, so we're going to need to fix that. And the way that we do it is by selecting the floor corners, and we need to press floor and floor so that we can select the tiles. I'm going to slope up the corresponding corners by 1, so we've created a bit of a sloped edge, and I'm going to go around the room raising the entire floor by 1, like so. And if we do all of the room, then you won't get any mismatched tile areas. You should be able to see what it is I'm doing here. So we're going to fix the textures. I'm going to right click on the grass because we're going to turn off transparent double-sided, and we're going to bring the texture down across all the corners. And you might need to use the method I showed you in the last video to select the correct texture triangle, and use the Alt key to texture split sectors. Actually, what we need to do is find the sand because that tile is sandy. There we go. So yes, if a tile is sloped diagonally and you want it to have a uniform texture, you can use the Alt key to get a unified texture on it. And the reason we can still see blue tiles here is because we still haven't fixed the textures in the pool room yet. So we're going to fix those in just a moment. I'm using the Alt key to get a nice uniform sand texture, and now we're going to have to reapply the diagonal corner of the water. And what I'm going to do here is select a nice edge texture, and we're going to use the same method as I showed you in the last video so that we can get nicely matching up edges. We're rotating the texture box so we can select the right triangles. Now all this may look quite complicated, but fear not, once you've done it a few times, then it's really not that difficult. And the reason I have started off with a very regular man-made shape is because those are generally easier. You can use this method to create a natural looking lake with jagged edges, but that is a lot more difficult when it comes to matching up all the corners. So until you've learnt this method, I would suggest using a regular man-made shape because it's a lot easier to see what you're doing with that. And start small. It's always better to start small than to take on something massive and feel a little overwhelmed by it. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the Alt key to texture off all these broken sections. And I'm going to use the texture triangle to fix all the side bits of these textures. What you can also do is slope up the corners so that it looks like a round pool, but I'd advise leaving one edge that isn't sloped, because otherwise Lara's just going to slide into this pool and not be able to climb out. So leave at least one side that isn't diagonal. I mean, what we can also do if we want to is round off these corners so it's giving the illusion of quite a round pool. So now what we've done is made a very round looking pool. Now Lara is going to slide down all these slopes. That's why we've left one side where she can climb out. So this is more for ornate purposes than practical purposes. We could also, if we point the arrow the correct direction, raise one bit of floor and then do the same this side and that side, and make ourselves a bit of a slope by holding down Control and using the diagonal arrows. We've now got one side where Lara can wade out. So we have two sides that are rounded, and the other side where Lara can wade out. And now I'm just going to go ahead and fix all these horribly broken textures. Okay, so I've now sorted out the floor of the pool, but one other thing that we need to do is we need to rotate the room so that we can now see the ceiling. And what we need to do here is we need to click on the transparent texture option again, and we need to texture all these ceiling tiles that we've sloped. Like so. So now they are not going to be visible at all, because you may be thinking, ugh, these ceiling corners are going to be horrible, and you might see them glitching through the floor. Well, this is why we texture them transparent. That is because if they are transparent, they will not be visible at all. When you're finalising the upper part of the pool, make sure that you texture the upper corner of the actual water surface with no collision. The final and most important step here is we need to ensure that the no collision on the upper and the lower surface of the pool matches up so that Lara can pass through the diagonal corners and so that we don't get any errors. The sides are completely diagonal, and it's the closest you're going to get to something round in the level editor, unless of course you use objects. So next I'm going to show you a couple more tricks that you can do with no collision. So I've shown you both the dry and the water methods of doing no collision, but there are a couple of lesser known tricks that you can do with no collision in order to mimic corners of surfaces. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the room that I'm in and I'm going to copy it. And we are going to raise it up to, what's the ceiling height? 24. Use Room Plus until the floor is 24 high, as you can tell on the little panel at the bottom of the screen. And then we're going to move the upper room over the existing one and create a new portal. So click and drag the entire floor, click on door, and we will have a portal to our room below. Click Draw Doors. And you will see here, once again, we have a room above the room that we've just been working in. So I'm going to go into our new upper room. I'm just going to stick a sun bulb in because I always do this. It looks a lot nicer when you do that. I'm now going to show you how you create no collision tiles with a flat edge. So I'm going to go into the room below again. What I'm going to do is add in another pillar, raise the floor so we have a division. And I'm kind of going to do the same as I did in the room below. So we're going to tilt in our ceiling. You don't have to tilt in the ceiling by this much. You only have to have a slope of 1 click in order to make a no collision division. It doesn't have to be this high, so you could just do it by that much if you wanted to, and you can still make it no collision. The most important thing is to have the tile divided in half. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to do the same thing that I did in the room below. Right, we have our divisions. I'm going to click no collision and paint all the corners in no collision. Turn that back off, that's cool. We need to do a quick texturing job here. I am just going to use this texture very quickly, and I'm not going to worry about whether it's matched up this time. I'm literally just going to do something with the textures so that we can actually see it in game. That's cool. And what we now do is texture the corners transparent, and that is cool. Right, so assuming we just want a diagonal corner, we do not want it sloped. We want this entire platform to be flat, and yet we still want the edges of the tile to be diagonal. There is a way you can do that. So what we do is I'm going to select the center tile again, hold down Control and lower the floor. Cool. But we can't apply no collision to that because the edges are flat tiles. Even though the room below has no collision, we're going to get errors in this room. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to point the arrow outwards. We're going to click Floor Plus, and we're going to do this for all the corners. So what we've now done is we've sloped the corners upwards, and we're going to turn on lighting and texturing again, Draw Doors. And what this has done is created edges that slope upwards. And by doing this, it may look a bit strange, but what we've done is created a surface that we can successfully apply no collision to. So I'm turning off the face edit again. I'm going to assign all these corners to no collision. And what I'm now going to do is select the transparent texture again. And before I do that, I'm going to click on the texture, apply it uniformly to all the edges. And then I'm going to click on the transparent texture, and I'm going to texture not only the corner itself, but I'm going to texture the little edge parts in transparent as well. So what we've now done is we've created an invisible raised corner that's got no collision applied to it, and that is going to have the same effect as sloping the tile in the opposite direction. The most important thing to remember when applying no collision is that the tile has to be divided in half. It doesn't matter whether you apply the no collision to the slope or the flat bit of the tile, and if you bear this in mind, you can get some quite interesting effects with it. The final method of no collision that I'm about to show you is probably the most complicated, but it can look really cool. So what I'm going to do this time is I am going to create another new upper room. So we're going to go new up, but I'm going to make it one click high. Bear with me. So we're going to go OK, and this is going to create a new upper room of one click in height. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new upper room of 8 clicks. Click OK. That's made a new upper room. We're going to use the key shortcut to create texture divisions, and I'm going to go around the room putting in pillars. And we've now created a pillar in each of the corners. We'll worry about the texturing a bit later on, but what I'm going to do is go to the one click high room, and I'm going to add in the pillars on the corners, just so we can keep up our theme of having a pillar in the corner. That way it's not quite such a boring flat room. Right. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the room below. I'm going to continue our central pillar so that it looks like the platforms are actually held by something. I'm going to go to the one click high room and continue that pillar. Right, now what I'm going to do is I am going to create something a bit like the platform below, but it's going to have a board around the edge, so it's going to have some thickness to it. You'll see what I mean in just a second. So I'm going to select one tile out from the pillar on each side, and I'm going to make it a wall. So I'm going to use the 2D minimap. I'm going to click next to the green central pillar, and I'm going to click the wall tile on each side of it. So you can see as I go around the pillar, I'm adding in a bit of wall. So what I'm going to do now is go to the lower room, and it doesn't matter whether you do the upper or the lower room first. And I'm going to make a diagonal tile. So, whoops, I had no collision still on. That's how I mean you can get the whole tile textured as no collision, and that will give you errors. So we're going to select no collision again, and we're going to get rid of that straight away because that will cause errors. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to do something very similar to what we did on the previous platform. I'm actually going to slope the ceiling down by 1 on each of the corners. So we're going to select floor to draw in our tile, and then we're going to click down to slope the arrow away from the pillar. So create our little corners all the way around, and there we have our edges. So I'm going to once again texture the center, click and drag to texture the ceiling in our texture. And then I'm going to select the transparent texture again, and you know the drill, we're going to texture all the corners as transparent. And now we're going to turn our attention to the upper room. So not the one click high, but the room above that. So what we're going to do here is something very similar to what we did in the room below. So what I need to do is click and drag on the floor on the 2D minimap, because we can't select the corners, they're not drawn in, and select floor. That draws in the corner tiles so that we can manipulate those. And we're going to turn up the corners like so. So each of the corners is facing upwards. And we're going to repeat the process that we did in the room below exactly. So click and drag, texture the platform, texture the corners, invisible. Now I have applied some textures to this room so you can kind of see what's going on a bit better. So what I'm now going to do is I am going to go into the room below, and we're now in the one click high room. So what I'm now going to do is I am going to use a very useful object, and this is the reason why I picked the Back to Basics Persia pack, because I know it contains this particular object. So we're going to get to our object list, and we're going to scroll down our object list until we find extra 98, and we're going to select that object. This may not look like much, but it's a very versatile, very useful little object. We're going to turn off face edit, and we're going to place it, and it so happens that that one is facing the correct direction. So that is really cool. And we're going to do this in each of the corners. Now, you may place it and think, oh no, I can't see it. That's because it has no thickness to it whatsoever. So if you can't see it, you may need to rotate the map until it comes into view, and then select one of the visible sides and click to rotate it. Do the same on all the pillars. Move around until you can see it. And that one has the edge tile facing the wrong way, so we're going to turn it all the way around like so, and do this for all the sides that we have. Now, as you can see, it's double-sided, so it really depends which of the two texture faces you want to use. You can use either, but I'm using this texture, and that is because in the Back to Basics Persia pack, there is a very handy matching texture. So if we come and we find this particular tile that I have selected now, the middle pane, if you click and drag on that, you will see that that is the same texture as the diagonal edge object. And if we then texture all the edges in the same texture as the object, that will create a seamless edge all around the ledge. And what we then want to do is select the transparent texture and texture all the blue tiles we have as transparent. We're not quite done here though, because if you remember, we need to have no collision applied to both sides of a tile in the level editor. It's tedious, but unfortunately it has to be done. So what we're going to have to do, we're going to slope in the back part of the ceiling tile on each side, and we're going to apply our no collision on the edge. Just deselect so we can see. There we go. We have successfully applied no collision in all the corners. Whoops. Turn off no collision, turn on face edit, and make sure all the tiles are textured transparent. And we are now going to do the same for the floor. So what we're going to do on the floor is we're going to do the outward method, and we're going to tilt it upwards. This will mess up the objects, but I will show you how to fix that. And we're going to select no collision on all the edges, and we are now going to select the transparent texture. Oh, I always forget that. I forget to put face edit on. Right, we're going to select all the floor bits and texture them as transparent, like so, because we don't want any of these tiles being visible at all. And like I said, the reason I selected the Back to Basics Persia wad is because I knew it had these handy diagonal ledge objects, and if you want to use them in another genre of level, they're fairly easy to retexture, but they're also fairly universal. So you could probably stick that texture in another genre of texture set, and it would still look okay. Now, as we rotate around, you can see that some of these edge tiles are now too high. That's because we've raised the corner of the floor. So what I'm going to want to do is delete these and get rid of it if it's looking wrong. And what we're going to want to do is place the object on the ceiling, not the floor. And then you can select the object and press floor plus. I know it's counterintuitive, but that actually lowers it, and you can lower it into position that way. And now we repeat this on the other tile. We're going to need to rotate it annoyingly, but that's fine, we can do that. And lower it into position using floor plus twice. And now if we rotate around the central pillar, the edges should all be nicely aligned. You may notice though that the objects are a lot brighter than the natural edge, so what we need to do is make sure you have lighting turned on. Make sure you have the object you want to alter selected, and then press lighting. And we want to select a colour that looks fairly similar to the one that we have on the natural edge. And that was a really good guess. So select your colour, select the object, make sure you have the object selected, right click and change the colour of the object accordingly. And you may need to do different colours around different parts of the room depending on how bright the lighting is in different areas. Finally, to finish off, what we want to do is place the no collision on the edges of the upper and lower sides of the tiles. Go to the right room, and we also need to apply this on the bottom level, otherwise we will get errors when we try and compile the level. So I've lit the area up a little more, and now rotating the room you can see what we've done here. We've created this really interesting central platform using different methods of no collision, and each one is slightly different, but each one creates a really interesting effect with a diagonal edge. And now we are going to go and look at this in game. So here we are in game, and we're on the first ledge, which has the first or dry method of no collision, and we can walk on the edge of the tile, and Lara can fall through the other half. And if we try backing off the ledge, we'll see that unfortunately a limitation of the game engine is that Lara cannot shimmy sideways on these corner ledges, but you can walk along the edge, and if you have the walk button down, Lara will generally stop if you try and walk to the edge. And we're going to now drop into the water and take a look at the water method, or the second method of no collision. And as we swim around in this pool, you will see that it has nice diagonal edges, and if we wade on the shallow corner, Lara can nicely walk through the shallow water, and then she breaks into a swim when she reaches the deeper part, and it's all at an angle, which looks quite cool. You can get some really nice effects with this method. It's probably the slightly harder of the two methods to achieve, as it can be difficult to match up the floor and the ceiling slopes, and it's generally easier to do this when you have drawer doors turned on, so that you can see where the different sections of floor and ceiling slope. But once you get the hang of this method, it can create some really cool effects. And just because it's called the water method doesn't mean you have to use it in a pool of water. This can be used to create a nice sloping landscape effect with diagonal edges between portals. So we're now going to use the flysheet to visit the third method of no collision, and this involves creating a completely flat platform with a diagonal edge. And as you can see, this is a really cool effect, and once again Lara can't shimmy around the corner unfortunately, but it still looks really cool, and you can create some awesome diagonal shaped platforms with this. And we're now going to once again use the flysheet to look at the final method, which involves creating a platform with some thickness to it and a ledge or object panel at the side in order to create the illusion of thickness to the ledge. And again, Lara can't shimmy around this unfortunately, but it still looks really cool. And it's by far the simplest way of creating an illusion of a rounded platform within the TRLE. So, I hope you guys have found this video useful. If you have, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you do subscribe, please do hit the little notification bell so that you're notified if I upload new content. And please do comment below if you enjoyed the video and let me know of anything else you'd like to see in future content. Thank you for watching, guys. TTFN. Oh dear, you all wanted to see that, didn't you?